missionary because it's chest supported. That one just came to me. That was just off the bat. Bang, bang, bang.
Dear.
But yes, I think the key here is like
Rach said that she was going to post these on her LinkedIn if we stopped making references to anything OnlyFans or sex related. So every time, you're just damaging our progress.
I love the taste of coffee.
Just trying desperately hard not to end up spilling my coffee down the side and then have to lick the side again because
Just on camera, just get it off.
It'd be the second time I've been that seductive in 2 days. After that hip thrust video. Oh god. Oh dear. Right. What have you got for me?
What do you call a fake noodle?
I don't know.
An impasta.
Oh man.
I just short and sharp today.
Yeah.
It's terrible.
That's yeah.
I couldn't figure out a way to like weave it in.
I mean, there is no way to weave that in unless we start talking about different people's arms in the gym. And suddenly go onto the topic of noodle arms, and then you get to noodles. But
when I was talking to you about my coffee pucks earlier, I was desperately trying to find a punchline
to your coffee puck situation.
Like when I was saying about how I got a perfect puck and like I just had to give it a quick flick of the wrist and it just popped out. I was like, there's definitely a punchline here, and I was sure that it's been long enough since I've got you in conversation with a dad joke that you were kind of like actually listening.
I still no longer trust you. Like literally every conversation we have, I said this to you the other day. Every conversation we have now, I feel on edge,
threatened.
I just don't, like anytime you start a story, I'm like, okay, cool, this is going to have a punchline somewhere, and it's going to upset me.
Yeah,
because
I mean, at least I don't just randomly throw things at your head.
I was quite entertaining.
Honestly,
I meant to call your name. I was so excited because I found the phone pad. I was like, Matt was looking for this. I found it. Great. Let's go over. Just meant to say Matt and then throw it at you, and instead just threw it at you and then just giggled.
I mean, like this is Sam's new T-shirt.
Please turn around. Strong light bulb.
Strong light bulb. This was also delivered to me. Projectile through the air out of my head, and then the next day, the phone roller. And like it was such a sideswipe as well. I was so shocked because I just was not ready for it.
I've never seen
even the slightest.
You looked so hurt. I was like, I feel like I might actually have bullied Matt, and that's not that was not the intention. The intention was genuinely to be a good person and be helpful. I was so happy. I was talking to someone yesterday about the fact my genuine superpower is just being able to spot things in a gym.
Fair.
Like I can find any piece of equipment that anybody needs.
So you're the gym's mum.
But I'm both daddy and mummy.
Oh. Don't say that again.
No, don't say that again.
If you're daddy and mummy and you have muscles, does that make you a muscle mummy?
Oh, fuck. No.
Watch out, Sam.
Sam's back as well.
Probably shouldn't say that on camera.
What?
I don't know, we can cut it.
What? Just what?
Sam's back and muscle mummies. And
I mean, if he wants to promote his entire business through muscle mummies, it's worked for him so far.
It has.
So I doubt he's going to complain too much about us using it as a.
No.
Yeah. That's what he's into, and he's happy.
Fair.
He seems happy.
Yeah, he does seem very happy.
Most of the time. I mean, you would be happy if you just spent 3 months in Portugal.
Yeah, especially when he's underneath the sumo deadlift. Seems to be extra happy.
That is a step too far.
I didn't say
that video is a step too far. Do not. Yeah.
If people want to go and investigate, they can go and investigate. It's up to them.
Anyway, so I'm Zab.
And I'm Matt.
And this is the performance proposition.
Yes,
and today's proposition is that there is no such thing as a bad exercise.
Yes. Is there?
No.
Cool.
I'm 100%.
Next week.
Actually, do you know what? I was thinking about this just before we started, and I was like, I'm pretty adamant that there is no such thing as a bad exercise in the vast majority of cases, but I have seen some absolutely mental stuff thanks to social media.
I mean, the whole argument, as with so many things, is based on how you define bad. Like, Is
I
bad
think- I
defined
think-
as completely devoid of value?
I think the thing that I find interesting, or the thing that seems to be used to define bad on social media is, does this line up with my goals? If it doesn't line up with my goals, it's therefore inherently a bad exercise.
Yeah.
And that's when I'm like, well, no, it just wasn't right for what you're trying to achieve. But that
Yeah.
doesn't mean that it doesn't have value. But then I saw a particular channel that we've discussed previously, but I don't want to get sued by. Yeah,
Rhymes with
unctional
flea.
matins. Yeah,
Functional matins.
what could it be? But they posted a video where they did an overhead kettlebell throw, and as the person did an overhead kettlebell throw, jumping overhead kettlebell throw,
As in,
they threw a kettlebell over their head as hard as they could, like a keg throw, but like backwards, and jumped up. And as they jumped up, the coach threw them a medicine ball. They had to catch the medicine ball and slam the medicine ball. So
that's a broken nose waiting to happen.
both of those things in isolation, I'm like, yeah, great. Like, understand the benefit. Like, Are they the best exercises to be doing in commercial gyms? The overhead kettlebell throw, probably not. But the jumping med ball slam, pretty cool.
I mean, if everyone else is on board and they're all aware that at some point, like, a kettlebell is going to come towards them at force, and they're locked into this idea of, reaction.
If you're training in a dodgeball gym, and at the same time there's a functional patterns coach down at an unctional matins coach down the other end of the gym with their client doing overhead kettlebell throws. If you can dodge a kettlebell,
you can dodge a ball, and if you can dodge a ball, you can win a dodgeball game.
you just win at life.
Just win a life.
That is the moral of that story.
And you will defeat Globo Gym, otherwise known as Unctional Matins Gym.
Nice.
Yeah.
But yeah, so there are stupid exercises, but in the vast majority of cases, I'd say there aren't. What do you? So yeah, how would you define a good or a bad exercise?
I mean, it's kind of like, does the exercise provide a stimulus that improves one of the fitness capabilities that we know to be, things, the strength, power, speed, mobility, flexibility. Well, flexibility is sort of the same.
Yeah, coordination.
Cardiovascular fitness.
Yeah.
Does it provide an adequate enough stimulus to affect either one of, even if it's to a tiny, tiny, tiny little degree, even if it's non-significant?
Yeah.
Does it provide? Because I mean, if you're going by that, then there's no such thing as bad exercise ever, because it always does something.
I'd add one additional caveat. So it has to be something you can progress. So it has to be controlled enough. So that's the thing that I take out of that other exercise, right? Because all in all, if you were doing an overhead throw and then catching a ball and doing a med ball slam, all in one action, you're getting really good explosive power development through your posterior chain, throwing the kettlebell. You're getting good reactive strength through the anterior chain as you catch that medicine ball, and then rate of force development as you throw that medicine ball down at the floor. But the fact that the ball's going to be off at a weird angle, you're not necessarily going to have time to react to then catch that ball. Quite often the coach is going to let you down in terms of their timing. So there's loads of things that could make the rep, each rep, impossible to really measure the effectiveness of.
Yeah.
So like it has to be something where it's controlled enough that you can see how each rep's been performed, you can gauge how effective that rep's been, and you can still find ways to progress that rep and progress volume and progress load and track performance.
So what you're saying is it needs to have an inherent reliability to it.
Yeah.
Like you need to be able to be, I'm going to perform one rep of this exercise multiple times, and each time get close to the same outcome with a very low coefficient of variation.
Yeah.
For it to be a good exercise. Because I mean, I was being a little bit, all-reaching, pedantic, because I think a lot of the arguments for good and bad exercises is people will say, yeah, but it doesn't do what I want it to do, so it's bad, like you said. And then you're going, but what if you're this person over here that wants this thing from that exercise? Like the classic one that we've talked about before is bicep curl lunges.
Yeah.
right? Now, from a hypertrophy perspective for your biceps,
Mhm.
it's not optimal.
Yeah.
From a hypertrophy perspective from lunges for their legs, it's not optimal. From a strength perspective, from both, not optimal. From a cardiovascular perspective, not optimal.
Mm-hmm.
But why would you do it? What purpose would it be? How
So
would
I
you
would
make that
I would
good?
say that it does have the capacity to be useful from a cardiovascular standpoint as part of a circuit. I'd say from a coordination standpoint, it's useful. But like the main reason I would use it is, say I've got someone who needs to get some additional single leg work into their program. I
Mhm.
don't have time to fit that into their program on another day as part of their accessories. And I can go, okay, right, well, I'll just get a little bit of extra volume, a little bit of extra training load on their legs. It's not designed to be massively fatiguing. It's not designed to massively overwhelm their system, but it's just that little bit of additional volume that's not going to harm them, will probably help their performance, particularly if you're looking at running performance, etc.
Yep.
And it doesn't take away so much from their arm work, so they can still get a decent arm session in, especially if arms aren't a priority for that individual. So again, running sports, it's also that whole thing of, with that exercise, the lunge doesn't take so much away from your biceps that you can't still get a decent bicep pump, especially if you do multiple sets.
Mm-hmm.
Like the first couple of sets, like maybe your legs fail first.
Yeah.
Maybe your legs let you down or take away from what you're getting from your arms. But if you do like multiple sets, eventually you're going to feel more fatigue in your arms than you do in your legs from that exercise. So you can still get a really decent pump. And that can contribute to hypertrophy gains. So especially if you've done like rows or a chest supported row ahead of that, and then you're just chucking in some extra arm work at the end.
What's a functional boy's favourite sex position?
I don't know.
Missionary, because it's chest supported. That one just came to me. That was just off the bat. Bang, bang, bang.
Dear.
But yes, I think the key here is like,
you know, Rach said that she was going to post these on her LinkedIn if we stopped making references to anything OnlyFans or sex related. So every time, you're just damaging our progress right now.
I mean, you could have told me this.
I feel like this. It's on me. It's my fault. It's my fault.
I think the key here is it doesn't have to be optimal for it to be useful.
Yep.
It can fill a gap that you need it to fill, and I think it's more from rather than the exercise itself being useless or bad or whatever. I think it's more context dependent than that. It's like, if I was trying to improve someone's maximal strength, and that was the goal, that was the full goal, like that's what we're doing in this cycle, then a bad exercise to do is probably like going for a 5K run, because it's not achieving the goals that I want to achieve from that training cycle. Now, is a 5K run bad? Not at all. If I'm cardiovascularly trying to improve someone and they're a runner and I'm trying to improve their running performance, and we're in like a peaking phase where we're doing lots of long runs and things like that, a bad exercise at that point is a back squat close to above 85% 1 rep for volume. Right? You just wouldn't do it because it would take away from what you want to do with the other things. So rather than an exercise inherently being good or bad, it's in the context in which you're using it, does it serve a function to improve what you're trying to improve?
Exactly. So for me, it's that whole thing of every exercise has a give and every exercise has a take. So anything that an exercise adds, so if you move down coordination spectrum slightly with an exercise, if you go from doing a chest supported seated row to doing a barbell bent over row, you're having to coordinate more musculature, so create tension through your spine to then actually perform the row when you're doing a barbell row. So you are going to take away slightly from the amount of tension that you can create per rep on a chest supported row, but you're getting an additional benefit of actually you're having to utilize your core to stabilize your spine and apply force in a way that you would probably apply it within a given setting in life.
And like we talked about before, working your hamstrings isometrically, which is how they like to be worked. So you're getting extra benefits from that, and you're getting extra muscle activation, so greater hormonal response to training, because you're doing more, you're using more, your neuromuscular drive overall in the session is going to be higher. So, like you say, more musculature is going to be involved. You're going to get more hormones released, and therefore potentially, post session, you're going to get a greater rate of muscle protein synthesis. So what you lose from mechanical tension in that one specific exercise, you gain globally across the session.
Potentially.
Potentially.
But the other side of it as well is like, as much as I said, for every give there's a take. Quite often, any give is greater than the take.
Yeah.
So like if you compare, like one of the things that I was thinking about recently was like, I was talking to someone and they said, oh well, why bother doing like B stance squats instead of back squats? Why bother doing it was coming down to the booty band thing again. So like, why put a booty band around your hips when you're doing a squat? As though putting the booty band around your hips was going to take away massively from your ability to produce force in triple extension. And it's like it adds a little bit of additional tension, adds a little bit of a stabilization focus to the lift.
Yeah.
But it doesn't really take that much away from the amount you can do in terms of triple extension. When you then think about how those two things combine, is there a greater stimulus potentially overall from doing something with a booty band? Probably.
Yeah.
And then if you take it down, if you take it down another step, so if you go, okay, right, so if you're saying there's no point in me adding in this additional plane of motion and adding in abduction, external rotation by having a booty band on, is there any point to me even squatting? Because I could just do an RDL and a leg extension, or a hinge and a leg extension movement, isolating my hamstrings and glutes for the hinge, isolating my knee extensors for the leg extension. I'm going to get far more activation, well, not far more activation, but the argument they'd be making is I get more activation by doing that in my primary muscle groups than by moving into a squat. And it's like, yeah, but it's more efficient from a programming standpoint, from an overall program standpoint, for me to have some form of triple extension movement and then still isolate the muscle group later down the line if I want to get an additional stimulus.
And like you said, if you're creating external rotation and your hips are stabilizing, the leg drive that you're going to be able to create in triple extension is going to be greater, because like I see it all the time, especially with Olympic lifters when they're pulling off the floor, because so many people deadlift all the time, they immediately default to the knees cave slightly and the hamstrings and the back take over. Like that when it gets heavy. And if you get them to drive their knees out, the weight feels harder, but the leg drive and the stimulus through the quads, and that's what we want, because we want to be getting upright, we want to be getting triple extension, is huge. So in that sense, you put a boot band in, and you lose overall stimulus and overall ability to lift the weight, but you get more of what you're actually looking for from the exercise.
You might lose out on what you're actually trying to get from the exercise to begin with as well. Like it might be that, okay, right, I put the booty band on and all of a sudden the weight that I lift drops down by 10 kilos. But because of the fact I'm then becoming more efficient in terms of how I lift it, down the line, I'm going to have the capacity to put more weight on, produce more force in the right plane of motion, overcome more load, create more tension in the muscles that I'm trying to target. So it's like short term, okay, there might be a slight loss, or it might just be a slight sideways movement. Long term, it gives me a platform for further growth and further development.
But even then, I wouldn't even say that short term there's a loss. I would say short term.
I think there can be. I think it's one of those things where might not be a loss. You might be absolutely fine. You might see that just cues them to move properly, right?
Well, there might be a loss in weight on the bar. There might be a drop in 10 kilos, right? But they might have been if we think about what we actually are looking for from the squat, again, we're looking for that leg drive. Like the amount more leg drive you'll get from the addition of the boot band. And you're trying to send that neural drive down to that to make the high, a high bar or even like a low bar squat with better leg drive. You're trying to get that to go there. Adding the band means you get more of what you're actually looking for from that exercise than you would have got if you didn't have the booty band.
It comes down to the whole argument about whether or not coordination is a useful thing from a strength perspective, and moving down that coordination spectrum. Like short term, so long term, it's going to reduce the amount of force required to overcome a bar, because of the fact you're going to apply that force in a more even and more efficient way. But short term, because of the fact you've been made less efficient by the challenge to stability, the amount of mechanical tension that you develop on those reps, because of the fact the bar's moving slower, because of the fact the movement's less efficient, your muscles have to work harder to overcome the same load or slightly less load.
Yeah.
So I can see the argument.
Yeah.
I do agree.
I see it all the time with, like, I even saw it the other day with a client that came in, and when he was doing the sessions on his own, he was bench pressing 70 kilos, right?
Mm-hmm.
And as soon as he started bench pressing, he did the classic elbows all the way out,
Yeah.
like open chest there, like real
Strange,
deltoidy, like upper chesty. And so I just moved him around a little bit, got him to set his lats in, stabilize his shoulders, get into that like efficient position, which is the efficient position, regardless of what anyone says. Like, it's the optimum load distribution between triceps, shoulders, chest, etc.
Yeah.
And lo and behold, he moved less weight. But like you say, long term, he's then going to have less of a sticking point in his lift, because he's like, we're trying to shift where the activation is going. And so, like, even just week to week, next week, he's probably going to have that same neural drive. Because I like to think about strength almost as you have a certain amount of neural drive going somewhere. And if your form is slightly off, like when you switch the form, your body still has that neural drive, it still has those resources, and you're just teaching it to redirect those resources. So you don't actually lose anything, you just redistribute it. And like you say, you end up more efficient, and then your ceiling increases.
I think the other side of it as well is, like, if you look at it from the perspective of time to develop maximum tension. So if I put myself in a position where I move in a way that's less efficient, and then the first portion of a lift, I'm using musculature I don't necessarily want to be using, as opposed to the muscle that I'm actually trying to use, in terms of using more anterior delt than pec on the bench press as you're describing. For that first portion of the lift, I'm trying to develop tension in those deltoids, and I'm not creating any tension in my pecs. So then when my pecs finally kick in, the reason that sticking point exists is because of the fact I've not given my pecs time to develop the tension needed to overcome the weight of the bar. So the bar then slows down, and then at a certain point my pecs develop enough tension to overcome that load and push and finish the rep. So if I was in the right position at the bottom of the rep, and I created tension in the right muscles, it might be slower moving out of that start position, but it would stay consistent the whole way through the rep, because by the time that the bar was moving, the muscles that were supposed to be creating enough tension to overcome the bar would have enough tension in them to keep on accelerating that bar right the way up to the finish point. So that's one of the, like, it's, I think you see quite a lot of things on social media in terms of people not necessarily understanding. So I don't necessarily think form has to be perfect in every single situation. Like, form is always going to break down, especially at high performance 100%. At points where you're trying to move as quickly, as powerfully as you possibly can in an unstable environment. Like, that's, your form's never going to be beautiful. But understanding why your form's breaking down is so interesting, right? So whether it's because of that, or whether it's because of the fact you are unable to recruit enough force quickly enough in explosive movements, and as a result you're getting knee valgus on the jump, etc. So like that's another one you see all the time, right? Everyone's saying, oh, well, look at this athlete, he gets knee valgus when he jumps. Or look at these Olympic lifters, they get knee valgus as they do their catch and as they come out of their squat. And it's like, yeah, but they're trying to move as explosively as possible against a load that is freaking heavy. And create a load of force.
Most of the time with stuff like that, so like my general rule of thumb is aim for perfect right up until like your stretch is like 95 to 100%. That's where it's about getting it done. Dude, like when you see these videos of Olympic lifters and everyone's like, oh, he's got knee valgus, I'm like, go watch his training. Watch every fucking session.
Watch every single rep.
And every rep will be beautiful, knees out, leg drive, high chest, bang.
Especially when they're doing their strength training. It's when they do their power stuff that you see their form breakdown.
Well, it's not even when they do it's when they do their max effort power stuff. It's like in all the sets leading up. Like, let's say a guy clean and jerks 200 kilos at comp, right? Every clean in the back room, up to that point, will have been textbook perfect. It will have been exactly the positions you'd expect to see. And then at that point, they get out there and it becomes not about keeping your knees out and generating leg drive. It becomes about generating as much leg drive as you can and then finishing the rep.
Yep.
And whatever means necessary. Because these guys are robust enough that they're like, cool, at this point, like I understand that my, adductors create quite an explosive hip extension, and therefore a little bit of knee valgus is actually giving me more momentum to extend my hip and get upright.
Yeah.
So that, and then when I'm upright, I've got the bar. It doesn't matter at that point.
Mm-hmm.
And I've just kept on accelerating through. Whereas if I'm there trying to like drive my knees out the whole time and like, then I'm probably going to miss it.
It's that whole thing. Have you heard of reinvestment theory?
No.
Like the world of sports psychology. So the idea that like under pressure, certain athletes will reinvest attentional resources in trying to perform a skill perfectly. So they'll talk themselves through that skill, and as a result, perform that skill far less efficiently. So that's why you see under pressure golfers will have like a jerkier swing, or tennis players their serves will break down because of the fact they're so hyper focused on trying to do that skill perfectly. They almost go back to an earlier stage of learning the skill. So like at a certain point, you should be able to perform the skill in unstable conditions, in high stress environments, because of the fact you've learned that skill so well that you can just respond and reflexively control your body position in space, regardless of where the bar ends up, where the ball is, when you're serving, all of those things. But if you then reinvest, you go, okay, right, well now I'm talking myself through the skill, so no wonder it's breaking down more. I'm like thinking about my knees being out, so when I'm landing in that bottom position and trying to get the catch, I'm thinking about driving my knees out as opposed to trying to drive the bar up, at which point I'm not recruiting enough tension in my primary muscle groups. So I'm not then powering and explosively powering out that bottom position, which then means that I'm having to create a hell of a lot more tension to try and come out of that bottom position, and as a result, I'm failing the lift.
Yeah.
So,
and I mean, you can almost break it down into like learning reps and working reps. Like I always say, especially to Olympic lifters, I'm like, when the bar's light and you're warming up, like really think about where you want your knees to be. Think about the position as you get past the knees. Think about staying over the bar. Think about getting tall. And then when you get to your working sets, like stop thinking. Get one or two cues that you know are like your anchors that get you into good positions, i.e. like pushing feet into the floor.
Yeah.
Sounds like such a stupid cue, but if that's what you're thinking about, your body knows what it needs to do because it's got that pattern. You just think about driving through your feet, and all of a sudden, perfect lift. You think, drive through the feet, pull up on the bar, like big chest on the catch.
Yeah.
Just little tiny things like that where you're just aggressively going for it. And you're adjusting one thing that's like an anchor thing that makes sure you're in that position to produce as much force as you can. Boom. Like most of the time when I tell people to stop thinking, that's when the good stuff happens.
Yeah. But it's because it's the second you're like hyper focused on each individual element, it's like, well, now I've forgotten all the other elements and I'm not focused on those, and I'm doing it like
it's too
out
quick.
of sequence. Everything's too quick.
It's like trying to think about when you're doing pogos and you're trying to think about pulling your toes up on each rep. It just doesn't work. Like I remember at Cardiff Met when I did the masters, like we were doing like the dissertation project was using bands, and the whole thing around using the bands was to give people time to think about doing the stuff. So we used the bands not for an overspeed thing, but just to be like, hey, these are some reps where you can think about pulling your toes up, and then we're going to do some reps without the bands so that you can just do the movement.
But that's it. So it's that whole thing of like, I can't remember which book I was reading where it was talking about this, but it basically made the point that if you see someone performing an explosive or athletic movement in a way that isn't necessarily as efficient as it could be, instead of trying to like correct them in that movement where they don't have the capacity to realistically control things, and things do need to be a bit more reflexive and a bit more responsive to their environment, add drills that stimulate the muscle groups that you want to stimulate, or add drills that give them the opportunity to work on that particular cue. And then, but do those things separately and still go back to the same movement, and just watch how much of an impact that has in terms of improving their form on that faster, more explosive movement. If you can do like booty band drills, if you can get people learning how to drive outwards into a band, and as a result that helps them to maintain isometric tension throughout the whole triple extension through their hips, then they're going to improve their squat form. Then when they take the booty band off, their squat form's probably going to be better without you having to coach them how to switch their glutes on and take steps back in terms of how much weight you put on the bar.
And what I was going to say is, I actually think we don't do it enough in just general lifting and like when we're coaching, that we don't break down the movements enough and be like, these are actually complex movements. Because like with Olympic lifting, if someone's struggling to stay over the bar for long enough, I give them Olympic lifting variation to stay over the bar longer, something that isolates that portion of the lift. You know, you might give them a low hang, you might give them a pull with a pause or something like that. But we don't do that with squats. We don't do that with deadlifts. We don't, or a lot of people don't. If you go, you know, elite level powerlifters, of course they're doing that stuff. They're identifying that thing. But most people who do it just assume that a couple of cues are going to change that. It's like, no, maybe switch it up. You know, if you're struggling with leg drives in your back squats, do some front squats. You'll put yourself in a position where you cannot not leg drive. You know, if you're collapsing forward, do some zombies. Do some zombie front squats. Like literally, you cannot collapse and it will limit your weight. But again, you'll just redistribute and you'll get better and that will increase. And then when you put the weight on the back,
but this kind of brings us back really nicely to like the whole idea of, are there bad exercises? It's like, there aren't bad exercises, there are exercises for goals. Zombie squats won't necessarily allow you to lift the biggest amount of weight possible, but can be a really useful way for cueing the correct form that will then allow you to enhance your main lift. And you can do zombie squats as an accessory to your back squats. And you can go, okay, cool, or you could do it as your warm-up sets. One of the things I really like about the way Tom Morgan's training at the moment is he puts in his unilateral work ahead of his bilateral work. But he just does his unilateral work as part of his warm-up for his bilateral work. So like the first 3 warm-up sets for him are just single leg exercises. And then he goes, cool, now I'll switch to my 2 leg exercises. And I'll do some more warm-ups. And then I'll get to my main weight. It's taken nothing away from his training. He's still doing the same amount of effective sets of the primary exercise that he wants to build on.
I mean, it's like even the stupid extended warm-up that I'm doing at the moment that people might look at and be like, that doesn't seem very effective to do a full...
When I think about all the exercises that are bad, I think about those. And when I say bad, in this scenario, the only reason I say those are bad exercises, it's not because they don't tick all the things we said earlier, it's because of the fact they actually give me nightmares.
But either way, so like I've taken to doing those, and genuinely, I enter my sessions now, having done what most people would be like, that's basically a full session, it's going to take away from everything else you're doing. But I enter that session feeling so connected, so much more mobile, so much more able to hit positions and depth and things like that. And I'm like, this is exactly where I want to be. Like, even if it limits me very, very slightly in terms of the total weight that I can put on the bar on that day, it means that I'm in the positions that I want to be in and I'm as efficient as possible. So that on the day that I really, really want to go heavy in that exercise, I trinicate that warm up, do something slightly less, and then just fucking smash it and use that extra energy. Or I just do that anyway and just accept that like that's just the point that I'm at and I just need to build from there. Because it makes me feel so good having done that. And like they say, people will look at that and go, why the fuck is he doing GHD sit-ups and weird Copenhagens and side bends and reverse Nordics and like single leg RDLs before he's actually doing his session? Like, surely that's inefficient and not effective. But it works for me. Some people it wouldn't work for.
Some people it wouldn't work for, but if it works for you, then that's the key, right? If it's that whole thing of like, some people need more prep time to then get themselves into a position where they can really switch themselves on for their main set. And if you're not switched on for your main work set, then there's no point in the main work set. So like the people that are like, oh well, you shouldn't bother with the warm up, to keep your warm ups relatively short and just focus on getting your main lift done. It's like, but if without that warm up, I don't switch myself on. I don't get that level of arousal I need. My body doesn't feel like it's mine yet, and I don't feel potentiated and ready to go. Then the sets are shit. And if the sets are shit, then there was no point to me doing the sets anyway. So then I might only get 1 decent set in because of the fact I didn't warm up, whereas I would have otherwise got 4 decent work sets in, 5 decent work sets in, and probably got more progress out of the workout.
And there is a slight caveat of, we're talking about us who have lots of time to train, and so there's a slight caveat of people who have shortened periods of time, i.e. 45 minutes, an hour. Like, they probably don't want to be doing everything that I'm doing, like before a session. You know, they probably want to be doing something slightly shorter, but that doesn't mean that there aren't things that you can do, and then you can't extend a warm up and get more from a session.
Well, it's that whole thing. If I spend 10 minutes warming up and as a result the 20 minutes of strength work
Is better.
is no, I was going to say is rubbish.
Oh, right.
And I say I have 45 minutes to work out.
Yeah.
And I spend 10 minutes warming up. I do 20 minutes of strength work where I don't really get the strength stimulus that I should get because the fact I've not woken up enough to do those work sets. And then I do my accessories for 20 minutes. Well, 15 minutes at the end of the session. That was a 45-minute workout in which realistically probably the only bit of it that was actually in any way, shape or form beneficial was my accessory work.
Yeah.
So I only really got 15 minutes of value.
Yeah.
Whereas if I spent 20 minutes warming up, even if it then means that I cut down my strength element of my session from 20 minutes to 15 minutes, but that strength element is effective.
Yeah.
And then I still do 15 minutes of
or 10 minutes
or 10 minutes of accessory work at the end.
Yes.
Thanks for doing the maths for me because my brain is not maths in right now.
You got 25 minutes.
I've got 25 minutes of decent work, and on top of that, the most important element of my session, the strength element of my session, was actually beneficial as opposed to just being 20 minutes of wasted time where I just felt a little bit crap and didn't really get my sets done.
Yeah.
So, it just depends on what people need.
Yeah.
We should probably get back to the topic of the day, which is, is there such a thing as bad exercise? So we spoke about bicep curls and lunges. The other one I hear about is like when people turn around and say, there's no point in doing burpees, just do press-ups and squats. Not understanding that, if your goal is strength, bench press and squats or press-ups and squats is probably going to be more beneficial than a burpee.
Yeah.
But if your goal is power and metabolic conditioning, you can get a decent power response throughout the whole of your anterior chain, throughout legs and triple extension by doing a burpee, which you're not going to get from doing.
Yeah. Or even if you just play a sport where you end up on the ground and you have to get up quickly. Rugby players. Making a tackle, getting up, jackling.
Yeah.
NFL, putting a hit in, getting back up, making sure that you're ready to go again. Rugby league, basketball, even to an extent, maybe you get taken out a little bit. You got to get back up. You got to be back on your feet, ready to go.
Back to the back end of the court, ready to defend.
Loads of team sports.
Yeah.
Super effective.
It's just what is when it comes to any exercise, it's ask yourself what is the give. So what is this exercise adding to my session? What stimulus is it giving me?
Yeah.
And what's it taking from me? And is that therefore the right exercise for that particular program? We spoke about bicep curls and lunges. You're very rarely going to program bicep curls and lunges. It's a suboptimal movement in a lot of ways, but there are very, very specific examples and cases where you would potentially use them.
Yeah.
Same's pretty much true of pretty much every exercise, bar overhead kettlebell throws to med pull slams. I can't. I just in that scenario, maybe don't split those two movements up.
Yeah, I mean, even just to go through the Instagram playbook of exercises that people would look at and say, hey, that looks stupid. Single leg RDLs on a BOSU ball.
Yeah.
People were like, why not just do B stance RDLs? Why not just do RDLs? And it's because this person maybe is a surfer or a paddleboarder and needs to work on strength and coordination in that unstable environment, reflexive control. So maybe we need to do that, a pistol squat.
Yeah.
Super inefficient in terms of loading up the anterior chain.
Yeah.
But mobility requirements, flexibility requirements, single leg drive, just strength in single leg. So you'd look at it and go, there's so much that doesn't offer you, but that equally there's so much that it does offer you.
Exactly.
And I think, to be honest with you,
so just quickly going back. So you made the point about RDLs and B stance RDLs and single leg RDLs and then single leg RDLs on a BOSU. It's the whole thing. If I jump from doing an RDL to doing a single leg RDL on a BOSU, the drop off in terms of the amount of tension I'm able to create is massive. But if I go from an RDL to a B stance RDL, the drop off's not that big, and I can bridge the gap quite a bit because the fact as my coordination improves, I create more tension, and therefore I'm still matching the amount of tension I was creating before. If I then go, okay, right, I've done that, let's go to single leg RDLs. Again, it's going to lead to a drop off in the amount of maximum strength, maximum tension that I'm going to create.
Yeah.
But I can bridge that gap. I'm not going to bridge that gap all the way, but I can reduce that deficit, so I can still keep that mechanical stimulus in place and improve coordination and improve balance. And then as I go onto the BOSU or onto the wobble board, again, it's just each time you move down, each time you take a step, don't make a jump Just take a small step. In the same way as if you were to change your rep scheme up and go from 10 reps to 12 reps, you wouldn't go, all right, I've been doing 10 reps, I'm just going to jump straight back into 20 reps. You'd bridge that gap with like a transition phase of doing like 12 reps, 15 reps, 20 reps.
You wouldn't go 10 reps to 2.
No.
It just doesn't make any sense.
No.
Yeah. And to be honest with you, I feel like there's so many ways that we could talk about this, but I feel like we've made the point.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, the summary is exactly what you said. Find an exercise, ask what that exercise gives you, what it takes, decide whether or not what you're trying to achieve, the give is greater towards what you're trying to achieve than what that exercise takes away.
Yep.
And if that's true, program that exercise. If the give, the take even,
is greater
than the give for what you're trying to achieve,
mm-hmm.
don't program that exercise.
Yeah.
Or just look at it on a sliding scale and be like, this is the stuff that has the most give, so this is going to be my primary focus of my sessions. This is the stuff that has the next level, the next level of give. So these are going to be secondary. This has the next level of give, these are going to be tertiary. And then beyond that, if I have time, I'll do these. If I don't,
exactly. I was going to say exactly that, because the one thing that we hadn't really spoken about, and we can still just put this into the summary, we don't need to talk about it any further, is we need to stop thinking about things as we can only do one style of exercise. Like your program is going to contain multiple exercises geared towards developing a particular movement pattern. So long as you hit that movement pattern in every single way you need to, over the course of your training week or over the course of your training cycle, you're going to get the progress you need to get. So that exercise might not give you enough of a strength stimulus, but it still improves coordination in some way, and you need to improve coordination in some way. Make sure you include an exercise that gives you enough of a strength stimulus. Make sure you give yourself an exercise that gives you enough of an endurance stimulus. And if you combine all of those exercises in the right way, you're going to move forward and you're going to perform optimally.
Exactly.
Awesome.
Cool.
That's it.
Is that summary done?
I think that's good.
Sweet. Happy days.
Happy days. And I think we actually managed to do an actual podcast rather than
I think we did.
Shit chat. This can be the first one of the second season.
I don't know. I think last week's was good.
Last week's was alright. Last week's all right, fine. We'll take out that little bit at the end. Just no.
No. Crack on. Catch you next week, guys, for some more
chats.
Shit chat. Take care.